Earlier this week, I was able to take my entire family to see Red One at the Bob Bullock IMAX Theater in Austin, Texas. Now, generally speaking, with press screenings and film festivals, the more swag they give you, like bags or hats or cups, the less confidence they have in the movie. So let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Let me know, what did you think about Red One, and what was your excitement level for the film? My opinion is not the right opinion. It's just my opinion, and I would love to hear yours. Now, this is a movie that's had a good bit of bad or troubling press over the last few months, as there was some hit pieces run against The Rock about how he was really late to set and peed in bottles or something like that. And then the reported budget for the movie is like $250 million, which to many of us feels excessive and like another example of Hollywood overspending on a project. But all of that is also very film Twitter insider sort of discussion. Movies like this are designed for families and just average filmgoers to have a good time. With that in mind, I thought I would start this review with my kids' opinions on the film. Karis, what was your favorite part of the movie?
My favorite part was the panda doing this.
Funny movie.
He's a man of few words.
I liked the movie a lot. It was just a good Christmas movie. It was for a bit older audiences, but I still really liked it.
Karis in action. So what age is it for?
It was probably for like middle school or above.
And you're not in middle school, so you shouldn't have watched it.
I shouldn't. But I've also seen a bunch of other movies I shouldn't have seen.
Hey, wait a minute, what are you suggesting with that?
You know.
Uh-oh. As you can see, all three of my kids enjoyed the film. It was a little bit more mature than we were expecting, so probably not the best for a 6-year-old, but the other kids had fun with it and had positive things to say about it. But what about me, the guy that's been whining about the film on the internet for the last couple of months because of its excessive budget? Let's get started with the good. And simply put, this is a big, slick blockbuster from people that know how to make big, slick blockbusters. Obviously, it stars The Rock as well as Captain America. These are two people that over the last decade have starred in many, many big, slick, crowd-pleasing blockbusters. But beyond that, it's directed by the guy that did the last two Jumanji films. Now, Welcome to the Jungle in particular, my family loves that movie. We have rewatched it so many times, and it's just a really good family-friendly adventure film. So the guy that was able to take the Jumanji book film franchise and make a new fun version of it is now doing that with Christmas time. Also, it was written by the guy that wrote a whole bunch of the Fast and Furious movies over the last 15 years. So this is another guy that has written a bunch of big, slick, crowd-pleasing films. Now, in the case of The Rock, this director, this writer, have they made products that have been huge amongst cinephiles in film Twitter? No, they have not. But this product was not designed for film Twitter. It's not designed to be high art. It's designed to entertain families. So you get a bunch of people that's their thing. Big, broad, crowd-pleasing blockbusters, and they're using their bag of tricks, Fast and the Furious ridiculousness, spy stuff, as well as the Jumanji sense of humor and adventure, and The Rock's mugging at the camera and giving it a Christmas spin. That's what this movie is. So if you liked the Jumanji movies, if you like the Fast and the Furious movies, if you like The Rock, there's a whole lot in here to entertain you. From beginning to end, it's a movie that there's always a joke, there's always an action set piece, there's always someone mugging at the camera, there's always some sort of creature appearing on the screen, there's always some big fun location that we're going to. It's a globe-trotting film, like many of the Fast and the Furious films have turned into. We're globe-trotting in this film, in this mystery, trying to track down Santa Claus. We're going to the North Pole, and it's this big, gigantic CGI city, as well as the buildings we go into. So there's a lot in there. It's very big. There's tons of spectacle to it. There's always some action set pieces. There's always a joke. Today's video is brought to you by Factor. Just last week, we turned our clocks back for the fall. The days are shorter, and you can use your time more efficiently with Factor. Let Factor take shopping, prepping, cooking, and cleanup off of your to-do list with Factor meals. From breakfast to dinner and anything in between, Factor has easy, nutritious options to keep you fueled and feeling your best. Factor delivers their meals right to your front door, and they are ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. Whether you like routine or you like mixing things up, Factor has you covered with 35 different delicious meals every week and over 60 additional convenience options you can add to your box, like keto cookies, pressed juices, and smoothies. I personally like to add the protein shake so I can start my day with some protein. Factor lets you do you. Choose from 6 menu preferences to help you manage calories, maximize protein intake, avoid meat, or simply eat well-balanced meals. Stay energized with America's #1 ready-to-eat meal delivery service. Head to factormeals.com/SeanChandler50 and use code SeanChandler50 to get 50% off your first box and 20% off your next month. That's code SeanChandler50 at factormeals.com/SeanChandler50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. A thing that was kind of surprising that I wasn't expecting, the world building was surprisingly effective. Where it's a movie that it doesn't have a post-credit scene setting up a sequel. Like, nothing in this is actually setting up anything else. At the same time, the movie does lay the foundation where you go, oh, if this movie's a hit, you could play this out for the Easter Bunny. You could play it out for all of these different mythical holiday creatures out there, because it does a good job of establishing these organizations and the secret world of mythical creatures. And so you're like, oh, I think this movie accidentally did a good job of potentially setting up a shared universe. And I don't think it meant to do that, which is probably exactly why it did a better job at it than all of the movies that intentionally tried to set up a shared universe. This one was just trying to have an interesting set of rules and organizations governing this situation where there are mythical creatures out there. The movie itself plays kind of like a big spy organization film. It's not espionage, but it's about the security detail for Santa Claus and what happens when he goes missing and everything that kind of the organization's trying to make sure that Christmas flows smoothly, and how that ties into governments and different mythical beings that have had feuds with Santa over the years past. So it actually does a good job of having all this stuff out there that's fleshed out. And of course, you've got movie stars in there that are doing their thing. The standout is actually J.K. Simmons as Santa Claus, that is just so good at no matter whatever he does, he's so good at it. So he can play a very jolly Santa Claus that it's a subtle version of it. That like he goes, there's a sequence where he goes to a mall as a mall Santa Claus, and he's just in subtle ways so happy to be a part of Christmas and get to see and interact with the kids. And it's just like, oh, that's a nice, sweet little moment. Now, also, if you've seen his movie Whiplash, this guy can be terrifying. That's when you have a fantastic actor that can just, in a subtle ways, be such a jolly Saint Nick, and also in Whiplash be this terrifying conductor. But if you like The Rock, he's doing his thing here. If you like Chris Evans's post Captain America counter balance, there's more of that here. So a lot of the high profile roles that he's done post Steve Rogers are like designed to be anti Steve Rogers, where Steve Rogers is the most wholesome of the superheroes, the most like person with good old fashioned morals, loyalty, a truly decent person. And he played that so well. All-American, good old boy. It's the true symbol of the ideals of America. And post Steve Rogers, he's played all these jerks, which is kind of funny because if you go back to early in his career, Not Another Teen Movie, Johnny Storm, he played cocky jerks and he's like reverted back to that, I think intentionally. If you've seen Knives Out, if you've seen Gray Man, and then in this movie, he's playing jerks, smug jerks that steal candy from babies. So there's a novelty in seeing Steve Rogers behave so badly. And there's a little bit of an arc in there that they give him as well. Final thing I want to talk about on the positive is that it actually has a surprisingly Christian message at its core, which I think is kind of a silly thing to say because it's a Christmas movie, which is as Christian of a holiday. Well, Easter's, I guess, overtly more Christian of a holiday, but the second most Christian holiday that you can think of. It's got Christ right there in the name. But at its core, it has a message that's kind of dealing with the concept of the naughty list and like redemption for everyone. And there's little lines in there where talking about how everyone makes mistakes and stuff like that. Everyone does bad things. And at its core, it's actually a very Christian perspective on these things where Romans 3:23, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. But then you also have John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he sent his only son, whosoever shall believe in him shall not perish but have eternal life. This idea of redemption for everyone, and even as people grow old and cynical and lose a certain innocence, lean into some of their worst tendencies, they're still redeemable, or to use Christian language, made in the image of God. Like, I think they accidentally put this very Christian message in there because it's a very secular Christmas movie otherwise about Santa Claus with no references to Jesus. But actually, if you look at what they're communicating, there's a lot of things in there that it's a really good message, a perspective on some of this stuff. Just it actually kind of strips away the Christian elements of this Christian message. Anyway, all of that said, it was a fun movie to watch with my kids. Now, is it a memorable movie to watch with my kids? No, it is not. So let's move on to the mixed aspects of the film. This isn't a good or bad thing. This is just something to discuss. We went to go see it at the Bob Bullock IMAX Theater. This is a true IMAX theater. It's a museum. So this is one of the original IMAX screens built 15 years, 20 years ago, whenever, in a museum for IMAX documentaries, the original use of IMAX. It is the biggest screen in Austin, Texas. It is the best screen to watch an IMAX movie in Austin, Texas. So is Red One worth watching in IMAX? Is it worth paying that extra money to see in IMAX? No, absolutely not. That's just insane. I don't think any of the movie was shot with IMAX cameras. I don't think it ever went to the full aspect ratio. So all you're doing is watching a movie on a screen that it's a little bit bigger, but it does absolutely nothing to take advantage of the IMAX format. There's no sequences in it where you're like, oh, that was cool. I mean, the last movie I saw there was Joker, a movie that's just people talking in an Arkham and a courthouse. And that one looks gorgeous in IMAX because they shot it with IMAX cameras. So there's all these wonderful, beautiful scenes in it. This is a big spectacle action movie that I don't think did anything to take advantage of the IMAX. So while it is a movie that's a big spectacle, it plays great with an audience, it plays great on a big screen, there's no reason to pay the premium price to see this movie in IMAX. From there, let's move on to the bad. And in a lot of ways, the bad here is the counterbalance to the good. It is a big, slick, well-produced, mega-budget blockbuster. It's also a very generic, big, slick blockbuster, just with a Christmas skin wrapped around it. So it's a little bit of a point of reference. If you're someone that doesn't go to the movies a whole lot and you see, oh, you like The Rock, he's in a big spectacle Christmas movie, you watch the trailer, it made you laugh, your kids liked it, you'll go and you'll see a big, slick action movie that you have a lot of fun with. If you're someone that's just burned out on blockbusters that are all kind of the same thing, that use the same bag of tricks, the CGI spectacle, everything is just bigger, instead of better, instead of smarter, it's just bigger, more outlandish. this movie is going to probably be pretty tedious to you. It's going to be very mid to you. It's a slickly produced, incredibly mediocre film. If you think that a Fast and the Furious Christmas movie sounds bad to you, that's kind of what you're watching here. It's from the writer of the Fast and the Furious movies, and it's a Christmas movie. And it's the same bag of tricks that this guy applied to the Fast and the Furious movies as the franchise went along, and it moved away from being about LA street racers committing crimes, and it moved into LA street racers becoming globe-trotting spies. This is a Christmas movie that turns elves into globe-trotting spies battling evil organizations. It's literally the same bag of tricks that they applied to Fast and the Furious over the last decade, applied to Santa Claus. Now, perhaps maybe with a director that handles the genre a little bit better, or the target audience a little bit better, so it works in its own kind of way. But if that sounds terrible to you, if that sounds like you just roll your eyes as soon as I describe it that way, if you rolled your eyes at the trailer, nothing in this movie is going to win you over. It leans into all of the obvious jokes that you're expecting. So Chris Evans is the skeptic jerk that is brought in on this and is supposed to have this redemptive arc. And half of his lines in the movie are just him going, "The naughty list?
A level 4 naughty lister?
Santa Claus? Krampus?" Whatever fantastical element is presented to him, he just repeats it with snark. The naughty list? That's half of his lines in the movie are just that reaction. That's his joke in the movie, and it keeps repeating it every single time a new thing is introduced in the film. And it's just, the kind of the same lazy jokes. Oh, this thing can turn toys into real life.
You don't have a Wonder Woman action figure, do you?
It's a real obvious joke. There's not a lot of wit there. It's the same basic, "Oh, I wish I had one of those" jokes that is played overdone. There's no actual wit to it. It's the most obvious, fairly obnoxious joke that you can make in that situation. From there, this doesn't bother me a ton, but the CGI doesn't look good enough considering the budget. If it actually cost $250 million, there's no excuse for some of the stuff the way that it looks. But in particular, like when they do the big chase sequence at the North Pole at the beginning of the film, it's just all this big CGI moving quickly, but none of it feels anchored in reality because it's almost certainly 95% computer generated. There's just nothing anchoring it to reality, so it looks like you're watching a very advanced cartoon. It's very reminiscent of the chase at the beginning of Attack of the Clones, and that is not a compliment at all. And just a lot of things like that it's just big CGI spectacle, but with no unique, interesting flavor to it. It's just more of the same stuff. Generic blockbuster stuff. Generic blockbuster jokes. And when you spend $250 million, on the one hand, you have to make it for the broadest possible audience, and that's how you make things that are kind of generic. But when you're spending that kind of money, there's no excuse for being that generic. When you spend that much money, why not spend more time on the script and the development of action set pieces to find something really and clever and interesting to do with them, not just more Fast and the Furious stuff with a Christmas skin wrapped around it. In the discourse surrounding the release of this film, I saw someone describe the movie as Men in Black meets Taken meets Elf with a $250 million budget, and that's a pretty good way to describe it. But as soon as they said that description, I thought, if you did that same concept as like a $50 million film that's R-rated, it's like, Violent Night, except with this premise, I think I would really be into that movie. But at the same time, that wouldn't be a movie for the whole family. This movie worked pretty well as a movie for the whole family. So that's what makes it so tricky. That as the guy that goes to the movies all the time, for me, it was like, I've seen this movie before. It's a little bit too generic, but did I have fun? Yeah. And did my kids have fun? Yes, they did. So I think it'll play really well to its target audience. But at the same time, you just wish that they made a movie that wasn't so generic, that had a little bit more of its own flavor, its own distinct vibe to it, whether in its humor, the action, something about it that just didn't feel like another generic blockbuster with a slick skin on it. But at the end of the day, I was entertained, and my kids were entertained. Overall, it's a B- on the entertainment scale, a 6.5 out of 10. Difficult to make a recommendation on this one. Simply put, like families with a bunch of kids in the middle school age range, you'll have a really fun time at the movies if you go see this with a packed audience. But most everyone else, you can either wait to stream it if you're mildly interested, or if it made you roll your eyes, just skip it entirely. It absolutely will not win you over. Let me know what you thought down below in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.